Hello, and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host, Allison K. Dagny. Today, the first thing I want to do is say thank you for listening. I haven't been keeping track lately, and today I went into my stats for the podcast, and we have over 127 episodes and over 140,000 downloads. You guys, this is an unbelievable number, and because you are listening, you are someone who has contributed to this. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, for reviewing, for sharing, all the things so that I can bring healing to the world. All right, so for today's topic, I wanted to expand on last week's episode of Rumination because this, of course, is my specialty. And the thing I learned over the last 3 years in my coaching business is that rumination, that repetitive thinking that you keep doing, is the umbrella that hangs over a lot of other things. So it is the thing you most often recognize as a symptom that is bothering you. But it's often not the deeper issue that women are struggling with. And here's what I mean. I've had women come to me and say they can't stop wondering why their ex is treating the new girlfriend better than them. Or that they see their ex living their best life and they wonder why they weren't like that when they were together. And the thoughts of these things are on repeat for them. They just won't stop. Rumination is the symptom. So think of it like this. You have a rash, you're itchy, you can't stop scratching your skin, and it's driving you crazy. We can treat the rash with ointment, but if the problem is that you ate something that you're allergic to and you keep eating it, unknowing that that's what's causing it, that rash is never going to go away no matter how much ointment or cortisone or whatever that you put on it. Does this make sense? Okay. Then stay with me because coming up, I'm going to define a different kind of rumination that you may have experienced, a kind of rumination called fantasy rumination. That's a little different from just thinking about your ex or the pain of the past, but maddening nonetheless. So if you aren't sure what it is, I'll define it and I'll explain it for you and give you tips on how you can keep these fantasy ruminations at bay. Now, before we dive in, I want to let you know that I have recently brought my I'm Worthy Immersion Program out of the vault. So that means it's out for purchase again. The I'm Worthy Immersion Program was designed to help you build an unshakable foundation of self-worth, which I truly believe to be the key to not only stopping ruminations, but healing in general. The current price of this 7-week self-paced course is $197, but the Radiate and Rise community members get it for 85% off of that. That's right. They're going to get this program for only $30, and I'm extending this offer to you as well if you decide to join the Radiate and Rise community membership. So those of you who join the community for $44 a month can also get the I'm Worthy Immersion Program, which is a 7-week course, for only $30. Members in the community get special perks. I call them member perks. So I want to make sure that you are aware that you can get these too when you become part of my community. So I encourage you to check it out. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me privately. But this is a really great opportunity to get not only the amazing benefits and structured healing and support of the Radiate and Rise community, but the added 7-week course for only $30. So let's get back to the rumination topic. And here's what I want you to imagine. You go to a movie theater, right? And you are the only one there in this big empty theater. And as soon as you walk in, they lock the doors behind you and the movie starts to play. And on the screen, you see your ex or the person who hurt you living their best life. You notice all the details of who they're with and how much fun they're having, and everything looks fucking perfect. Excuse my language, but that's annoying, right? As the movie is ending, you see the credits, and it says, written and directed by you. Then, before you have a chance to do anything, another movie starts to play on the screen, and it's the same BS, right? Same stories of them not being held accountable, getting away with all the horrible things they did, and living it up again. And again, this movie was written and directed by you. And you cannot get out of this theater. You're locked in. You just have to keep watching the same movies again, over and over and over. This is called fantasy rumination or imaginative rumination, and it is something that many victims of abuse find themselves doing repeatedly. No matter how creative or detailed the movie gets, you're trapped in this narrative, unable to walk away and live your own life. That's what these kinds of ruminations can feel like, and they are captivating, and I say it in that way because it's not the good kind of way, right? Captive. You're being held captive. So today I want to explain the differences between repetitive thoughts, which many people are familiar with, and the more subtle creative ruminations or fantasy ruminations, which can feel like we're imagining all these stories in our head, but they're just as damaging. Okay, so let's define the two types of thoughts, right? Repetitive thoughts are just the cycling through the same memories, conversations, or outcomes that happened over and over again, like replaying the past. Imaginative ruminations or fantasy ruminations are created stories that have no foundation or validity and are not rooted in a past memory, right? So it'd be like watching old home movies of what actually happened versus you're creating a fantasy story, okay? So these are the two different types. An example of this was a former client of mine who she wasn't stuck on a past memory, but what she was doing was she was creating these vivid fictional stories about her ex and his new wife. And she would tell me about these imaginations in great detail. She knew that her ex and his new wife were going out of town. So she concocted these fantasies about what they were doing and how much fun they were having. And I mean, even right down to the kind of wine they drank and the food that they ordered. It's so important to recognize that even though these stories are imagined, they're still rooted in rumination and keep you stuck. Rumination, even this fantasy kind, becomes a thought habit over time. And eventually, it gets automated by your brain. So the more you think about it, the more important that your brain thinks it is for your survival, then what it does is it puts it on automatic for you so that you don't have to consciously make an effort to create the stories anymore. They just seep in all the time. So I want to talk about the trap of these creative ruminations. So just like watching a movie that feels really real in the moment, creative ruminations can feel very vivid and very real. So you mustn't forget that the brain doesn't know reality versus imagination. That's so important to know. So when you're replaying in your mind, whatever thoughts that are going through your head, your brain thinks this is actually reality because it doesn't know what's real and what isn't. To the brain, it's all real. But here's the thing. These might seem harmless kind of fantasy thoughts on the surface, but they still keep you trapped in the cycle of pain because often what you're concocting in your mind is a story that hurts you. This happened to another client of mine. She was not focusing on the past and not replaying those old memories, but she'd built this whole storyline about what her ex and his new girlfriend were doing now, down to imagining what they were wearing, where they went on dates, and how happy they must be together. But those thoughts weren't helping her heal. They were making her pain deeper. The actual story she kept repeating with all those details was making her sad. It was making her angry, bitter, resentful, you name it, right? It was basically driving her crazy. Now, here's the thing. What most people don't know is that it only takes a few repetitions of a thought to turn it into a snowball, turn that into an avalanche, and start rolling down the hill. It only takes you thinking about it a few times for you to be trapped inside that movie room that you yourself wrote that movie and directed it. And the other thing most people don't know is that it isn't that hard to turn it off. You also have the power to change the story, to essentially write a new movie. Because you see, it's not about just turning it off, right? If it were that easy to turn off, you'd already have done it by now. You wouldn't even be listening to this podcast. What needs to play on the movie screen is a new movie. Now, let me explain a deeper layer here because this is important, but it seems that the thoughts that you conjure up and create are the main problem, right? Like that's kind of, I'm thinking, I'm overthinking, I have this rumination, right? And yes, of course, it is a problem. But again, it's a symptom. The deeper part here is that there is something that you are believing on a subconscious level that is causing you to create these mental images in the first place. They're not just coming out of nowhere. They're coming from what you believe on a deep subconscious level. So, for example, my client who was thinking about her ex and what they're having for dinner and the exact type of wine and all of that and how happy and loved they were, she was feeling extremely angry watching this movie that she created of them being so happy and in love, right? She was unhappy replaying this movie, yet she couldn't stop replaying it and she couldn't stop thinking about it or the details. Why? Here's where the aha moment is. Because she believed on a subconscious level that she wasn't good enough and that she had done something wrong in the marriage. So the only logical conclusion for her was that his happiness was because he was no longer with her, right? That is not necessarily true. That can't be proven to be true. This was just a story she kept telling herself that was creating that rumination, okay? That fantastical, creative ruminating. This deep layer of pain is essentially the food allergy to the rash, right? So what I mean is the fantasy ruminations were the symptom of her believing that she wasn't good enough. Okay, so follow with me here. This instance was specific to my client, right? And so, everyone is different, right? Everyone has different beliefs that drive their behaviors. And yes, rumination of any kind is a behavior, okay? You might not think it is because it's happening in your head and you're not like physically out doing something, but rumination is still a behavior in response to a subconscious belief or maybe a system of beliefs. In the 3 years that I've been helping women recover from emotional abuse, rumination is always part of this equation. Sometimes it's more for other people than it is to others, but it's usually there in one form or another, right? Some people may be ruminating a lot less than others, but it's always there. Getting triggered by a memory, right? And spinning into a panic attack, right? Or just being consumed by fantasy thoughts. Either way, it's all the same. It's thought habits. That's what I want you to remember. These are thought habits, okay? So what do I do first and foremost when I'm working with someone like this? Always start with their self-worth. People who have high self-worth aren't doing this. They aren't ruminating like this. So that's a critical place to start. It is literally the first lesson inside my emotional healing mastery program for my one-on-one clients. It is so key to healing. So I make sure we get to that first. When you believe that you're worthy and you believe that you're good enough and you believe you're worthy of peace and love and happiness and all these things, you stop letting your mind drag you into fictional stories that are only causing you pain. So I'd like to offer you a quick tip on how to at least start to change the story. And as I said earlier, there is always a much deeper layer and sometimes many layers. And unfortunately, on a podcast, I'm not going to be able to coach you through your personal layers, right? Because everyone's different, to uncover what it is that's keeping you on that fantasy loop. But you absolutely can catch these things in the moment and start telling yourself a new story. So when it happens, just notice it. Don't judge it. Just say, oh, I'm doing that again. I'm thinking about it again. Then ask yourself some questions. So if you have a pen and paper, I'd encourage you to write this down or come back to this episode and you can write them down later. But why do I believe that this person is living their best life? And if you're answering, well, because I can see their social media and I'm hearing that they're traveling and they're sailing and they're doing all these things, right? Does that mean something to you? And if so, what does it mean to you, right? What are you making this person and their behavior mean about you? This is a really important question. Is it possible that this person is not as happy as I keep imagining? Is that possible? Is it even possible? And how can I truly know, right? Even if they tell you right to your face how happy they are. Do you even know that that's true? Are you inside of them? Can you possibly know that? Is it possible it's all a mask or it's all a facade, right? So when you do this, when you ask yourself these questions and give yourself pause and reflection, you're giving yourself space to stop the movie, at least temporarily, okay? And this helps you retrain your brain so that you're not repeating these movies over and over and over again. If you want to stop the movie permanently, you can learn how to do that in my one-on-one emotional healing mastery program, where I use a 4-step tool and my amazing introspective questions, because I'm so good at that, to get to the root of your specific ruminations. In all seriousness, though, I have a lot of really powerful questions that I use to help my clients figure out what's going on a deeper level. So just remember, I want to leave you with this. True emotional freedom is not about if other people are happy, or if other people are suffering, or if other people are getting punished, or if they're just living their best life. It's not about what other people do or don't do. It's really not about anything other than what you believe. So, my question to you then is, are you choosing to believe something that sets you free or keeps you trapped in a cycle of pain? If it's the latter, then message me so I can help you. All right, don't forget about the special offer for the I'm Worthy Immersion Program through the Radiate and Rise membership, and you can get details in the show notes for that. Or if you'd rather have deep one-on-one support from yours truly, then you can set that up separately, and we can finally turn off those, let's call them horror flicks, that you keep replaying in your mind. So thanks for being here. I hope this episode has been helpful to you, and I will talk to you next week.